Assalamu alaikum, you're watching Pivot and I'm your host Dr. Talat. In today's program, we shall be discussing about U.S. foreign policy and South Asia. As we know that it's very interesting time with regard to our region and beyond. And we have peace problem in Afghanistan. We have peace problem in Kashmir. We have very asserting India, hegemonic India on the east. And similarly, we have China, which is rising, and we have Russia, which is asserting. So in the regional context, we see that American policy, sometimes it appears to various scholars that it shifts from somewhere to somewhere. So we see continuous changes in the U.S. foreign policy, and it's important to discuss with regards to our region. So to discuss this very important topic, we have with us an eminent scholar from America, Professor Dr. Akis Kalaitzidis. He received his PhD from Temple University, Philadelphia, in political science. He teaches at the University of Central Missouri, and he has expertise in world politics and U.S. foreign policy. Welcome, Dr. Akis.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
Dr. Akis, first of all, I would like to know what are the central elements of U.S. foreign policy with regards to South Asia?
Well, for the longest time, America had been a expansionist and a managing power in terms of the global system. But lately, with the election of a new government in 2016 under Donald Trump, things have changed. America seems to be withdrawing from the international system. And as such, I would have to say that the relationship between America and India has gotten closer on commercial grounds, but also the United States seems to want to withdraw from the region, withdrawing into itself.
Right. When we discuss U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan, I will just begin with Afghanistan, as you mentioned. What do you see Trump's, we are unclear about what Trump administration actually wants in Afghanistan. There is sometimes a negotiation, then there's a halt in negotiations.
Sure.
So what is your opinion? What is the Trump's policy with regards to Afghanistan?
Well, Trump as a president is notoriously mercurial, and as such, one has a very hard time saying what is the actual policy that he has. He announced that the talks with the Taliban have started again. We don't know details yet about the discussions, so it's pretty hard to have an immediate information. On the other hand, what we know is that he wants to disengage the country from Afghanistan, and as such, he wants to desperately find a solution in the case of Afghanistan in terms of signing an agreement. In my opinion, that would be the wisest course. If you want to leave Afghanistan, you have to establish first some kind of normality in terms of the government and the government process and what the role of the Taliban would be in that new Afghanistan before you leave. Otherwise, when you leave, the situation will go back to what happened in the 1980s when the Soviets withdrew.
Yeah, right. When we discuss Afghanistan, I agree with you that you need to bring a normalcy in Afghanistan before you actually withdraw from there. Now, when we talk from foreign policy perspective, Pakistan is an important country,
Sure.
and India is also an important country. So, but they have conflicting interests in Afghanistan. So, what do you say about that?
Well, all countries have conflicting interests especially in a country like Afghanistan, who has been at war for 40 years. The region has its own interest, and each player has its own interest. Iran has a different idea about what should happen in Afghanistan as well. But I think with regards to Afghanistan, the first focus that we should have is bringing peace to the country, who's been ravaged by war for 40 years. Once we have this, then Pakistan and India will have to decide their own relations with the new government. Though I understand that Pakistani government is pretty close to Afghanis, to Afghani governments.
Yeah.
So I believe that it would benefit Pakistan if peace comes to Afghanistan.
Right. When we say India and Pakistan, like we observe that, when we talk of Indo-US nuclear deal, or Indo-US nexus that is building up very fast. So, and Pakistan, of course. So, how do you draw a comparison between US prism with regards to India and Pakistan?
Well, lately, since 2016, there has been a significant change in U.S. foreign policy. With the ascension of President Trump, certain things have been changing, and one of the things that this president is looking for is commerce. Commercial relations are foremost in his mind, and because of that reason, India becomes then an extremely important player, especially vis-a-vis the trade war with China. It's a pivot basically versus China. So India is an extremely important partner to the United States, and unfortunately for Pakistan, that leaves Pakistan a little bit in the cold. Though in the past, the United States has been very helpful in trying to have good relations with Pakistan. This India-United States nexus is overshadowing relations with Pakistan for sure.
Yeah. So, do you think any difference between President Obama's policy towards India and Pakistan and President Trump's policy again towards both the countries?
Yeah, President Obama was more of a manager of the global system. He had some similarities with President Trump in terms of Afghanistan, but generally speaking, the President of the United States currently, President Trump, his philosophy is such that it is a radical break with the previous administration. We can talk about the nationalism, we can talk about the xenophobia, we can talk about the anti-Muslim feelings, and all these play a role into the U.S. foreign policy, of course. Domestic issues affect foreign affairs. So it is difficult to say, to have a good outcome, and I would like my Pakistani friends to know that not everybody is in such a way in terms of Pakistan, but unfortunately the President of the United States sees it differently.
Yeah. Dr. Akis, I need to have a short break here.
Sure.
We'll be back after a short break. Welcome back. Dr. Akis, when we discuss President Obama's policy towards India and Pakistan, of course Afghanistan too, because when we're talking in the context of region, so do you think there's a continuity of the broader policy towards these three countries?
Well, there is some continuity. India was an important partner in the Obama administration as well. It has become an extremely important partner in the Trump administration. That's the only continuity I see. The president of the United States right now wants to withdraw from the region. He believes that this globalism is the reason why things aren't going well in the world. So he's a very different kind of person than the previous president. And so I see that there is a break in the continuity between the foreign policy of Obama and the foreign policy of Trump regarding Pakistan and India and Afghanistan. However, one can say that this is not a permanent situation. First, because the President of the United States is in trouble, and we don't know where this is going to lead. But also regarding the India specifically relationship, that would not change that much because the United States has interest in India, and India has interest with the United States. So I think that triangle that relationship bilateral relationship is going to stay strong.
Okay. That leads, in fact, me to a question that most people, general public, have this kind of perception that in fact India is a kind of policeman of United States of America in the region, And since India is also trying to advance its hegemony drive, so do you agree with this perception?
I can't really put my finger on it. I don't know whether or not the United States would call India its policeman in the region. India itself is a powerful nation. It is a continent itself. It's a 1.2 billion people. So it's hard for me to say that India would not have played a role whether or not the United States was involved in the situation. So I think India has its own interest in the region that it will follow, regardless of what the United States wants.
Yeah, Dr. Akis, a very important question that I would wish you to respond. Now, at the moment, there is a burning issue between India and Pakistan is Kashmir. Like Narendra Modi, in fact, made certain political decisions in the valley in Kashmir, which are not only impacting India-Pakistan relations, but I think they are impacting regional politics too. So, what do you think? How U.S. looks at Pakistan and India with regards to Kashmir issue?
Well, unfortunately, the United States isn't so involved in the issue of Kashmir. And I say unfortunately because I was yesterday visiting Muzaffarabad and met several refugees, and I heard their stories, and they're heartbreaking. And there is an issue of human rights which the United States has been a champion of for so long that it is unconscionable that they don't follow up on this situation. However, because of the relationship of the United States to India, it would be my understanding that the United States will be very muted in terms of its response in whatever India is doing, annexing and occupying Kashmir.
Right. When we talk of Kashmir, there are in the U.S. dynamics. Like you said, the relationship between India and U.S. improved a lot during the President Trump's time. So then, where do we stand with regards to Kashmir issue? Is a question that
I would always advise my Pakistani friends and my Indian friends that Kashmir is a human rights issue. It is not an issue of territory. It is not an issue of international relations in terms of power and in terms of regional dominance. It should be a human rights issue. It should be brought in the forefront as such. And the situation in Srinagar and other areas in occupied Kashmir should be seen as such.
Right.
That's a human rights issue.
Right now, I think the scholarship in United States and elsewhere in the civilized world should grasp new realities in the region, and that is Kashmir's annexation that India has done. Now, I would just like to ask you why this human rights issue does not attract the Western scholarship, to be very precise. If I'm not offending,
you're not. This is what I said yesterday in my speech. There is not enough scholarship done in the Western world on Kashmir.
Yeah, since when I talk about Kashmir, I talk about people of Kashmir who are under suppression for more than now 100 days. Yeah. It's grave human rights issue. Yeah. So why is this? Why? What is the reason of this? This lack of scholarship on Kashmir, and why Western world? Because it creates a wedge between West and the East. Yeah. It creates a wedge between, there's the perception that since they are Muslims, so that is why world is quiet, closes eyes on what is happening in Kashmir. So why this lack of scholarship on Kashmir?
Well, first of all, India's fault in the sense that you cannot do research as much in Kashmir, in occupied Kashmir. But it goes deeper than that. It goes deeper than that in the sense that power trumps human rights, national interest trumps human rights. And this president, especially this president, as opposed to other presidents in the past, he's so focused in America first, and America, in defining America's interests. And America's interests are commercial, and therefore they lay with India. It is unlikely that we will see any action by the United States in regards to Kashmir. I don't know that it has so much to do with the religious aspect, the fact that they are Muslim. I believe it has to do more with the power that India yields in the United States.
Yeah. So, what do you see then? A supplementary question to what I asked. What do you see then future of Kashmir issue? Because if the world powers continue to close their eyes on human rights issues that are occurring and grave human rights violation occurring in Indian occupied Kashmir, so what future you will see about Kashmir?
The way that I see, to complement the Prime Minister of Pakistan in his speech in Muzaffarabad, when he said that I will drag you to the International Criminal Court and to the International Court of Justice, I support this position because I think that's the best way to avoid conflict, first of all, because I would think that it's not to the benefit of Pakistan or India to go yet another war over the issue of Kashmir. I believe that it is the best way to bring the issue of Kashmir to the international attention and pressure other Western governments to pay attention to what is going on in the region and to make sure that they take some kind of action.
Yeah. Dr. Akis, I need to have a short break here.
Yeah.
We'll be back after a short break. Welcome back. Dr. Akis, we were discussing about how India is acting in Kashmir. No, there are two that we discussed, two issues. First issue is human rights issue. And second issue is relates to something to do with international law or international norms that India, despite UN resolutions on a issue, unilaterally, made amendments in their constitution and unilaterally acted and annexed Kashmir. So they, in total disregard of what international community has decided about it, like you have to go for self-determination. Though these two grave issues, one is human rights issue that we discussed, the world community closes eyes on, and second, an illegal occupation or something which in total disregard of international community. So what are your comments about it?
Well, I mean, as a human being, I feel very strongly about the plight of the people of Kashmir. Nobody would like to be under the boot of anybody. The situation has gotten out of hand ever since the Modi government decided to annex the place and remove all internet or power from the people there, which is a human right, and it's a human rights violation. And that's a personal opinion and an offering on the situation. Now, whether or not the United States can have a mediation on the subject, that's kind of a different take, because that's a government to government is a much more complicated issue to deal with. United States could, for example, have a very good role in bringing about a solution to the Kashmiri issue, but that would mean that would have to restrain India, which right now it feels powerful and is extroverting itself by attacking its neighbors. In my opinion, I think that's all the signs of the collapsing of the world order in terms of the United States being the liberal power that it was, that gave the rules of the game to every country, which then India could not basically unilaterally move into Kashmir until now, when the President of the United States has essentially said, I don't care. We will withdraw from the world, and therefore Kashmir is a local issue, and India, of course, is the global power. Yeah. They made their move.
Dr. Akis, I don't care attitude actually is a big problem.
I agree. I agree. You know,
I would just like to, I think there are international communities are stakeholder on Kashmir.
Yeah.
International institutions like United Nations is a stakeholder, and India, Pakistan are stakeholder. Now, how do you perceive a role by international community, by international institutions like UN, and what should Pakistan and India do to resolve this issue?
the international community is us. If the big countries, where the world powers, decide that they're not going to be involved, especially the United States, it creates a vacuum in which India, which has a stake in Kashmir and a lot of military presence, will take advantage of. Now, if the world community understands human rights properly, it should say no to India. However, the world community is us. If the government of the United States and the government of the UK do not decide to act, the international community does not exist.
Okay. Right. When we discuss, specific to United Nations mediation with regards to Kashmir issue, why I stress on this issue, because this is a central issue, central to peace of this region. So, what could be the nature of U.S. intervention?
Well, the U.S. could provide all kinds of guarantees. The U.S. could be a big brother to the region. It could provide development funds. It could provide. It could allow the United Nations and the rest of the world community to put observers and to look after the human rights of the people of Kashmir. Unfortunately, that is not probably going to happen at this point.
Okay. Dr. Akis, we discussed Afghanistan, we discussed India, we discussed Pakistan because they are South Asian neighbors. I would just like your comments on, since China is a rising power. So what do you see China-Pakistan relations?
Right.
And of course, as we discussed off camera, that we would like to have a relationship, multilateralism, and we should have a relationship with all the countries. So this China, Pakistan, US, how do you see this relationship emerging?
Well, first of all, I totally agree with you in the off-camera comments that multilateralism is the way to go and conflict is not the way to go, war is not the way to go. And China, because of its unique foreign policy making, it is capable of providing Pakistan with a lot of development. The Belt and Road Initiative is one that Pakistan will probably take advantage of. It will create jobs. It will bring in funds. So I think the relationship would be stronger between Pakistan and China, and that will probably affect the relationship with the United States negatively. Because right now, China and the United States are at war, at least in trade. And it's not a war that does not have victims. As we read every day in the newspapers, it has affected American farmers. It has affected Chinese producers. So we're in the midst of a trade war, and that is probably going to affect the triangle that you just mentioned.
Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Akis. You came to our show and discussed a very important issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having
me. Viewers, this was a very important discussion on U.S. foreign policy with regards to South Asia. I think we, by pointing out to various options, pointing out to various follies and various issues that confront the region, we can always contribute towards a positive debate on the issues. We also see this very dynamic region of South Asia, continue to evolve, in a manner that we see every day. There are some developments, regional or international, with regard to the region. It's a very important discussion. I thank my guest from United States of America. For today, it's enough. And until next week, Allah Hafiz.